Just after sunrise, a red-cockaded woodpecker, or RCW, emerges from an artificial cavity to begin its day. Obviously, artificial cavities did not always provide safe refuge for RCWs, yet today they are an essential tool that has facilitated conservation of this federally endangered species. But in order to understand the importance of artificial cavities to the RCW, we must first consider the unique natural history of this species. To understand the RCW is to understand the habitat in which it evolved, the fire-maintained pine forests of the southeastern United States. Frequent fires shaped these forests into open park-like savannas dominated by fire-adapted pines such as the longleaf pine and a diverse herbaceous understory. Missing from these forests were snags on which other woodpeckers typically rely for cavity excavation. Thus, RCWs developed a suite of behaviors unique among other North American woodpeckers to survive in this fire-maintained ecosystem. RCWs are the only North American woodpecker to exclusively excavate cavities in living pines, a monumental task that can take several years to complete, but yields a cavity that can be used for several decades. This reliance on living pines also led to the species' cooperative breeding system, a social system related to the significant investment required for cavity excavation. It became more advantageous for young birds to remain on their natal territories and use extant cavities while living as members of a social group. Members of social groups act as cohesive units, moving together across the landscape throughout the day. Among other daily activities, RCWs will periodically return to their cavity trees to maintain existing cavities and excavate new cavities, also known as cavity starts. Natural cavity excavation is a slow process, beginning with the construction of an entrance tunnel through living sapwood to reach the dead heartwood of the tree, where RCWs will excavate the inner vertical chamber of their cavity. As RCWs chisel a tunnel through 8 to 15 centimeters of sapwood, they must constantly battle copious sap flow from the wounded living tissue, a characteristic they ultimately exploit to their advantage. Maintaining sap flow creates a smooth surface on the bole of the tree that hinders the ability of predators, like rat snakes, to climb the tree and reach the cavity. In addition to maintaining this natural barrier to predators, RCWs constantly defend their cavities from usurpers, such as other woodpeckers and secondary cavity nesters. RCWs will not excavate cavities in just any living pine. Pines must be large enough to allow RCWs to excavate the inner chamber totally in the heartwood of the tree to prevent sap from filling the cavity. The loss of large and old pines to timber harvest was a primary historic reason for the decline of the RCW. Even today, many RCW populations exist in young forests that lack an abundance of large and old pines, but managers can address this limitation using artificial cavities. Researchers at North Carolina State University developed this process to facilitate population expansion where suitable cavity trees are limited. The process begins with scraping bark off the area of the tree where the cavity will be installed, showing reddish bark that would surround a natural cavity. After framing the artificial cavity on the tree to serve as a guide, a portion of the tree is cut and removed for installation. The artificial cavity is installed, plastered, and spray painted brown for a more natural appearance. Finally, resin wells are created with hand tools and white spray paint is used to mimic sap flow.
Typically I put more white on there. Once you recruit the cluster, more of a visual effect, so you might just want to whiten it up a little bit more, something to catch your eye. The resin wells here, that way it looks a little more attractive, and plus to get some sap flow going, just to make it look more natural. Here, RCW already.
The surrounding forest structure also influences the choice of cavity tree. As shown here, high-quality nesting habitat has an open canopy with large and old pines for cavity construction, minimal hardwood and pine midstory, and typically a lush herbaceous understory that is promoted by fire. Here we see a different perspective on the open canopy structure surrounding an RCW cavity tree. Over the long term, this habitat structure can be maintained with prescribed fire at least once every 3 years, ideally during the growing season. Low-quality nesting habitat typically is associated with fire suppression, which results in limited herbaceous ground cover and a well-developed hardwood midstory, the latter often resulting in cavity abandonment. Wildlife managers employ a variety of techniques including prescribed fire, chemical and mechanical hardwood control, and silvicultural techniques to transform these sites into high-quality nesting habitat for the RCW. Herbicides can be used for control of hardwood mid-story trees in situations where fire is not sufficient or practical due to heavy fuel loads or dense vegetation. Here we see a patch of habitat treated with the herbicide Valpar to target the dense hardwood mid-story. Mechanical mid-story control offers an alternative approach to herbicides that most often is used when rapid hardwood removal is required, such as preparing a site for artificial cavity installation. Mechanical shredding can have dramatic effects on forest structure and should be coupled to prescribed fire to promote native herbaceous ground cover and prevent hardwood encroachment following the treatment. Thinning is a silvicultural technique managers use to remove large canopy trees and open the canopy on sites where rapid removal is required, but shredding or herbicide application are not appropriate or practical. Thinning, along with other mechanical and chemical treatments, should be followed by prescribed fire every 1 to 3 years to mimic the natural disturbance regime and maintain the desired forest structure over the long term.
Provision of quality nesting habitat and cavity trees are essential to the recovery of the RCW, as these factors can directly limit the number and the persistence of potential breeding groups. Managers address these limiting factors in the short term by managing individual cavity trees using tools like artificial cavity installation and mechanical hardwood mid-story control. Over the long term, managers use silvicultural techniques, coupled with prescribed fire, to maintain high-quality nesting habitat and facilitate natural population expansion without reliance on artificial cavities.
Cavities and cavity trees have been considered the foremost limiting factor for the RCW. The science-based management strategies developed for this species are critical to its recovery and have provided RCWs, such as this one, the chance to end their day with a return to a suitable cavity and high-quality nesting habitat.